The black Mercedes pulled up to the front of Harmony's restaurant with a loud screech. The car was so shiny that people walking by stopped to look at it. Marcus. Wellington stepped out of the driver's seat and handed his keys to the young valet without even looking at him. Marcus was a tall man in his 40s with perfectly styled gray hair and an expensive navy blue suit. His watch cost more than most people made in a year. He owned 3 tech companies and loved to remind everyone about his success. Money had made Marcus feel like he was better than other people, especially those who served him. "Make sure you don't scratch it," Marcus said to the valet in a cold voice. "That car costs more than you'll make in 10 years. The valet, a young college student named Tommy, just nodded and said, "Yes, sir. I'll be very careful." Marcus walked toward the restaurant entrance where his 3 business partners were waiting. These men were almost as wealthy as Marcus, but they were much kinder to other people. They had learned to ignore Marcus's rude behavior because they needed him for their business deals. "Marcus, you're late," said Robert Chen, checking his gold watch. Robert was the oldest of the group and usually tried to keep everyone calm. "Traffic," Marcus lied. He had actually spent an extra 30 minutes at his office yelling at his assistant about coffee that wasn't hot enough. "Are we ready to make this deal happen?" The 4 men walked into Harmony's restaurant together. The place was beautiful, with soft lighting, white tablecloths, and fresh flowers on every table. Classical music played quietly in the background. At the far end of the restaurant sat a shiny black grand piano that gleamed under the warm lights. Harmony's was not just any restaurant. It was special because it offered live music shows 3 nights a week. Famous musicians and talented local artists would perform for the guests while they ate their expensive meals. The owner, Mr. Giuseppe, believed that good food and beautiful music made people happy. A young woman approached their table with a warm smile. She was Maya Johnson, 28 years old with kind brown eyes and her hair pulled back neatly in a bun. Maya wore the restaurant's uniform, a white shirt, black pants, and a small black apron tied around her waist. She looked professional and moved with quiet confidence. "Good evening, gentlemen," Maya said politely. "Welcome to Harmony's. My name is Maya and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Marcus looked at Maya with cold eyes. He noticed her dark skin and immediately made up his mind about who she was and what she could do. In his world, people like Maya only existed to serve people like him. "We want the best table in the house," Marcus said without saying hello back. "And we're here for business, so we don't want any interruptions." "Of course, sir," Maya replied, still smiling. "I have a perfect table for you by the window. You'll have a lovely view of the garden and it's quiet enough for conversation." Maya led them to a round table covered with a crisp white cloth. Fresh roses sat in a crystal vase in the center. The table was set with the finest china and silverware. Each place setting had 3 different forks, 2 knives, and crystal glasses for water and wine. "This will do," Marcus said, sitting down without thanking Maya or waiting for her to pull out his chair. His business partner sat down more politely, with Robert even saying thank you to Maya. Maya placed leather-bound menus in front of each man. "Can I start you gentlemen with something to drink? We have an excellent wine list and our sommelier can help you choose the perfect bottle for your meal." Marcus picked up the wine list and started reading. The restaurant had wines from all over the world, some costing hundreds of dollars per bottle. Marcus wanted to show off his money, so he pointed to one of the most expensive options. "We'll have the 1995 Chateau Margaux," he said, trying to sound important. But he said the French name wrong, making it sound like Chateau Margaux instead of the correct French pronunciation. Maya's eyes showed that she noticed his mistake, but she stayed professional. "Certainly, sir. Just to confirm, you'd like the 1995 Chateau Margaux?" She said the name correctly in perfect French. Marcus's face turned red. He was angry that this waitress had corrected him, even though she did it politely. In his mind, someone like Maya shouldn't know more than him about anything, especially not expensive French wine. "That's what I said," Marcus snapped. "Do you have a problem with your hearing?" Maya's smile became a little forced, but she kept her voice calm and professional. "Not at all, sir. I'll have the sommelier bring the bottle right away for your approval." As Maya walked away from the table, Marcus watched her go with angry eyes. Robert, James, and David, his business partners, looked uncomfortable. They had seen Marcus be rude before, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt worse. "Marcus," Robert said quietly, "maybe you could be a little nicer to the staff. We're trying to make a good impression here." Marcus laughed coldly. "Impression? On who? The help?" Robert, you need to remember your place in the world. We didn't get rich by being nice to people who work for tips. David, the youngest of the group, shifted in his seat. I just think... You think too much, Marcus interrupted. That's your problem, David. In business, you can't be soft. These people need to know who's in charge. Maya returned with the sommelier, an older Italian man named Giuseppe Jr., the owner's son. He carried the expensive bottle of wine carefully and showed the label to Marcus. The 1995 Chateau Margaux, Giuseppe Jr. said with a slight Italian accent. An excellent choice, sir. This is a very special vintage. Marcus nodded like he was an expert, even though he knew very little about wine beyond the price. Giuseppe Jr. opened the bottle with practiced skill and poured a small amount into Marcus's glass for him to taste. Marcus swirled the wine around, sniffed it loudly, and took a sip. He had no idea what he was supposed to be tasting for, but he nodded anyway. It's acceptable, he said, as if he was doing them a favor. Giuseppe Jr. filled all 4 glasses and left the bottle on the table. Maya stood nearby, waiting to take their food order. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes to look at the menu? Maya asked. Marcus hadn't even opened his menu yet, but he didn't want to admit it. We'll start with appetizers. Bring us whatever's most expensive. Maya smiled patiently. We have several wonderful appetizer options. The lobster cocktail is very popular, and our foie gras is prepared fresh daily. We also have, just bring us one of everything, Marcus said rudely, waving his hand like he was shooing away a fly. And make it fast. We have important business to discuss. Maya wrote down the order and said, Of course, sir. I'll have the kitchen prepare everything for you right away. As Maya walked toward the kitchen, Marcus turned to his business partners with a satisfied smirk. You see? You just have to know how to handle these people. Show them who's boss from the start. But Robert, James, and David were not impressed. They were embarrassed by Marcus's behavior and worried about how the evening would go. They had no idea that things were about to get much worse. Maya, meanwhile, walked to the kitchen with her head held high. She had dealt with rude customers before, but something about Marcus made her feel uneasy. She could tell this was going to be a long night. In the kitchen, she found her friend Carlos, one of the cooks. Tough table tonight? He asked, noticing the tension in her face. I can handle it, Maya said quietly. But deep down, she was already preparing herself for whatever Marcus might do next. The stage was set for an evening that would change everything. Maya returned to the table carrying a silver tray with the appetizers. She had arranged everything perfectly, making sure each dish looked beautiful. The lobster cocktail sat on ice, the foie gras was garnished with fresh herbs, and the caviar was served with tiny spoons made of mother of pearl. Here are your appetizers. Gentlemen, Maya said as she began placing the dishes on the table. We have the lobster cocktail, foie gras with brioche, beluga caviar, and oysters Rockefeller. Marcus looked at Maya with disgust as she worked. He noticed everything about her appearance and decided to make cruel comments. Look at this, he said loudly to his business partners. Do you think she even knows what caviar is? I bet she's never seen food this expensive in her whole life. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she set down the last plate, but she kept her professional smile. Is there anything else I can bring you right now? Actually, yes, Marcus said with a mean grin. I want to know something. Did you even finish high school? Because you look like the type who probably dropped out to have babies. The words hit Maya like a punch to the stomach. She had actually graduated at the top of her high school class and had gone to college on a music scholarship. But she couldn't say any of that. She needed this job too much to fight back. I graduated high school, sir, Maya said quietly, her voice still polite but strained. Marcus laughed loudly. Sure you did. And I bet you went to Harvard too, right? He turned to his business partners, expecting them to laugh with him. But Robert, James, and David just looked down at their plates, embarrassed by their colleagues' behavior. Marcus, Robert said under his breath, maybe we should just focus on our business meeting. But Marcus was just getting started. He had drunk half his glass of expensive wine and was feeling even more confident about his superiority. No, Robert, this is educational. I'm showing you how the real world works. People need to know their place in society. Maya stood beside the table, trapped. She couldn't walk away because they might need something. But staying meant listening to more insults. Other diners at nearby tables were starting to notice the commotion. Some looked uncomfortable, while others whispered to each other about what they were witnessing. Marcus picked up a piece of lobster with his fork and made a show of eating it slowly. Delicious. I bet our waitress here has never tasted lobster in her life. Probably thinks McDonald's is fine dining. Sir, Maya said, trying to stay calm. Would you like me to explain today's special entrees? Oh, she wants to explain things to us, Marcus said mockingly. Tell me, sweetheart, do you even know what half the words on this menu mean? Or do you just point to pictures in the kitchen? Maya's face burned with shame and anger, but she forced herself to answer professionally. Our chef prepared a beautiful rack of lamb with rosemary and garlic, pan-seared duck breast with cherry sauce, and fresh Atlantic salmon with lemon butter. All of our entrees come with seasonal vegetables and your choice of potato or rice. Marcus made an exaggerated, surprised face. Wow, she can read. Maybe there's hope for her after all. He turned to David, the youngest member of their group. David, your foundation gives money to charity, right? Maybe you should donate to whatever school taught her to sound out words. David's face turned red with embarrassment. His family foundation did help fund education programs, but not for the cruel reasons Marcus suggested. Marcus, please, David said quietly. This isn't appropriate. What's not appropriate, Marcus said, his voice getting louder, is pretending these people are equal to us. Look at her. He pointed at Maya like she was an object. She's probably got 3 kids by different fathers, lives in some government housing, and thinks this job makes her somebody important. Maya's eyes filled with tears for the first time that evening. Marcus had unknowingly hit close to a painful truth. Maya didn't have children, but she was supporting her younger brother who had a serious medical condition. She worked 2 jobs to pay for his treatments, and every dollar mattered. An elderly black couple at a table across the room had been watching the scene with growing anger. The man, distinguished and well-dressed, leaned over to his wife. I can't listen to this anymore, Helen, he whispered. I know, William, his wife replied. But what can we do? At Marcus's table, the situation was getting worse. Marcus had finished his second glass of wine and was becoming even more cruel. You know what I love about places like this? He said to his business partners while Maya stood there. They hire people like her to make us feel better about ourselves. It's like going to the zoo. You look at the animals and think, thank God I'm not them. James, who had been quiet all evening, finally spoke up. Marcus, that's enough. You're being cruel for no reason. Marcus turned on James with angry eyes. Cruel, I'm being honest. The world has winners and losers, James. We're winners because we're smart, we work hard, and we make good decisions. She's a loser because she doesn't. It's that simple. Maya wanted to tell Marcus that she had made good decisions. She had studied hard, earned scholarships, and was pursuing her dreams. But life had thrown her family a terrible situation with her brother's illness, and she had to make sacrifices. None of that was her fault, but Marcus would never understand. I'll go check on your entrees, Maya said, her voice barely steady. You do that, Marcus said dismissively, and try not to mess up our order. I know thinking isn't your strong point. As Maya walked toward the kitchen, she heard Marcus continue talking to his business partners. You guys are too soft. That's why I make more money than all of you. I understand that some people are just born to serve others. It's the natural order of things. In the kitchen, Maya leaned against the wall and took deep breaths. Carlos, the cook, saw her distress and walked over. Maya, what's wrong? You look upset. Table 12, Maya said quietly. The man in the navy suit. He's being difficult. Carlos peeked through the kitchen window at Marcus's table. Want me to talk to Giuseppe? Maybe we can move them to another section. Maya shook her head. No, I need the tips. That table ordered expensive wine and food. Even if he's horrible, the tip money will help pay for my brother's medicine. Carlos knew about Maya's situation. Her younger brother, Jerome, had been diagnosed with a rare kidney condition that required expensive treatments. Maya had left college to work full-time and help her family with the medical bills. You shouldn't have to put up with that, Carlos said angrily. I can handle it, Maya replied, but her voice lacked confidence. Back at the table, Marcus was telling his business partners about his latest business deal. I bought 3 apartment buildings in the poor part of town, he bragged. Raised all the rents by 30%. If they don't like it, they can move somewhere else. Where are they supposed to go? David asked. Marcus shrugged. Not my problem. I'm not running a charity. Poor people need to learn to make better choices if they want better lives. Robert tried to change the subject to their business meeting, but Marcus was enjoying his performance too much. When Maya returned with their entrees, he was ready to humiliate her more. Finally, Marcus said as Maya approached with another server to help carry the heavy plates. I was starting to think you got lost. But then again, I bet you get confused easily. Maya and the other server carefully placed the beautiful dishes in front of each man. The food looked and smelled amazing, prepared by skilled chefs who took pride in their work. Gentlemen, you have the rack of lamb, the duck breast, the salmon, and the filet mignon, Maya said. Can I bring you anything else? Marcus cut into his lamb and took a bite. Then he made a disgusted face even though the food was perfectly cooked. This is terrible, he announced loudly. The meat is overcooked and cold. Are you trying to poison us? Maya knew the food was perfect. She had seen it come out of the kitchen just minutes before. I'm so sorry, sir. I can have the chef prepare a new dish for you right away. No, Marcus said firmly. I want to know why you brought me bad food. Are you too stupid to tell when something is wrong? Or do you just not care about doing your job right? The entire restaurant was now watching their table. Other diners whispered among themselves, and some pulled out their phones to record what was happening. Maya stood there, humiliated in front of dozens of strangers, while Marcus continued his attack on her dignity and character. The evening was far from over, and Marcus was just getting started. Marcus was not finished with his cruel behavior. As Maya stood beside their table, trying to figure out how to handle the situation with the food he claimed was bad, Marcus deliberately knocked over his wine glass. The red wine splashed across the white tablecloth and dripped onto the floor. Oops, Marcus said with a fake smile. Look what happened. I guess you'll have to clean that up. Maya quickly grabbed some napkins from a nearby table and started cleaning up the spilled wine. As she bent down to wipe the floor, Marcus made another cruel comment. That's better. That's the position these people should be in, on their knees, cleaning up our messes. Robert, James, and David were horrified by their business partner's behavior, but they still didn't have the courage to stop him. They were afraid that if they made Marcus angry, he might pull out of their business deal. Money was more important to them than standing up for what was right. Marcus, Robert whispered, people are watching us. Good, Marcus replied loudly. Let them watch. Maybe they'll learn something about how the world really works. Maya finished cleaning and stood up. Her face was burning with shame, but she kept her professional composure. I'll get you a fresh glass and more wine, sir. Wait, Marcus said, holding up his hand. Before you go anywhere, I want to ask you something. How many jobs do you have? Maya was confused by the question. I'm sorry, sir. Jobs? Marcus repeated slowly like he was talking to a child. How many different places do you work? I bet someone like you has to work multiple jobs just to pay rent on whatever apartment you share with 6 other people. The question was designed to embarrass Maya, but it was also accidentally true. Maya did work 2 jobs. During the day, she cleaned office buildings, and at night she worked at Harmony's restaurant. She was saving every penny for her brother's medical treatment. I work here at night, Maya answered honestly. And during the day? Marcus pressed. Come on, don't be shy. What's your other job? Fast food? Cleaning toilets? I'm genuinely curious about how people like you survive. Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. I clean office buildings. Marcus slapped the table and laughed loudly. I knew it. Did you hear that, guys? She cleans toilets for a living, and probably not very well if tonight is any example of her work. Several diners at nearby tables were now openly staring at Marcus with disgusted expressions. A young couple at the next table was whispering angrily to each other. An older woman was shaking her head in disapproval, but Marcus either didn't notice or didn't care about their reactions. Maya wanted to tell Marcus that she was good at both her jobs. She took pride in her work no matter what it was. She wanted to tell him that she was saving money for something important, something that mattered more than expensive wine and fancy food. But she couldn't say any of that without risking her job. I'll get your wine now, Maya said quietly. Hold on, Marcus said. I'm not done talking to you yet. I want to give you some free advice. You're young and maybe there's still hope for you to improve your life. Maya stood frozen, knowing that whatever Marcus was about to say would be hurtful. First, Marcus began, counting on his fingers, you need to learn to dress better. That uniform makes you look cheap. Second, you need to go back to school and learn some skills that actually matter. Third, you need to stop having children you can't afford to raise properly. I don't have any children, sir, Maya said softly. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Yet give it time. People like you always end up with kids they can't take care of. It's just a matter of when. David finally found the courage to speak up. Marcus, this conversation is inappropriate. We should focus on our business meeting. Marcus turned to David with angry eyes. David, your problem is that you're too naive. Your family has money, so you've never had to deal with the real world. You don't understand that some people are just naturally inferior. That's not true, David said, his voice shaking with emotion. People are different because of their circumstances, not because of their race or economic background. Oh, please. Marcus laughed. You sound like one of those bleeding heart liberals who think everyone is equal. Look around, David. Do you see any equality here? I'm wearing a suit that costs more than she makes in 3 months. I drive a car worth more than her annual salary. I own companies and she cleans bathrooms. If we were equal, wouldn't our lives look more similar? Maya listened to this conversation with growing pain. Marcus was reducing her entire life to stereotypes and assumptions. He didn't know that she had been an honor student. He didn't know about her musical talent. He didn't know about the sacrifices she was making for her family. To him, she was just a poor black woman who deserved to be treated badly. I should check on your wine, Maya said, trying to escape the conversation. Actually, Marcus said with a mean smile, I changed my mind about the wine. I want something different. Bring me a bottle of the most expensive champagne you have. Maya nodded and started to walk away, but Marcus called her back. Wait, did I say you could leave? I'm not finished giving you life advice. Maya stopped and turned back, her heart pounding with stress and humiliation. Where was I? Marcus continued. Oh yes, your future. Let me tell you what's going to happen to you. You'll keep working these dead-end jobs for a few more years. Then you'll get pregnant by some guy who won't stick around. You'll end up on welfare, living in public housing, complaining that life isn't fair. And you know why? Because you don't have what it takes to succeed. Tears started forming in Maya's eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't let Marcus see her cry. That would only make him feel more powerful. But here's the thing, Marcus continued. It doesn't have to be that way. You could try to better yourself. Take some classes, learn some skills, maybe find a rich man to take care of you. Though honestly, looking at you, that last option might be difficult. James pushed his chair back from the table. I can't listen to this anymore. Marcus, you're being disgusting. Disgusting, Marcus repeated. I'm being honest. Sometimes the truth is ugly, James. But pretending everyone is equal doesn't help anyone. Meanwhile, other diners in the restaurant were becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the scene. Several people had pulled out their phones and were secretly recording Marcus's behavior. In today's world, cruel behavior often went viral on social media. But Marcus was too focused on his cruelty to notice. An elderly black man at a table across the room was watching the situation with growing anger. His name was Dr. William Hayes, though nobody in the restaurant knew who he was yet. Dr. Hayes was a retired music professor who had taught at the university for 30 years. He had seen racism his entire life, but watching this young woman being humiliated brought back painful memories of his own experiences. William, his wife Helen whispered, maybe we should leave. This is too upsetting to watch. No, Dr. Hayes replied firmly. That young woman needs someone to stand up for her. These people are cowards. He was referring to Marcus's business partners who were letting the abuse continue. Back at Marcus's table, the situation was getting worse. Marcus had ordered Maya to bring him different food, then complained about everything she brought. He sent back the champagne, claiming it wasn't cold enough. He demanded fresh bread, then said it was too fresh. Nothing Maya did was good enough, and every interaction was an opportunity for Marcus to insult her intelligence, her appearance, or her background. You know what your problem is? Marcus said as Maya brought him his 4th different drink of the evening. You people always expect special treatment. You want everyone to feel sorry for you instead of taking responsibility for your own lives. I'm not asking for special treatment, sir, Maya said quietly. I'm just trying to do my job. Your job? Marcus laughed. Your job is to serve me, and part of serving me is accepting that I'm better than you. The sooner you learn that lesson, the easier your life will be. Giuseppe Jr., the restaurant manager, had been watching the situation from across the room. He was torn between protecting his employee and keeping a customer who was spending a lot of money. Finally, he approached the table. Excuse me, Giuseppe Jr. said politely to Marcus. Is everything satisfactory with your meal and service? Marcus saw this as an opportunity to cause even more trouble for Maya. Actually, no. Your waitress has been incompetent all evening. She brought us the wrong food, spilled wine, and seems unable to follow simple instructions. I think she might be drunk or on drugs. Maya's face went pale. Being accused of drinking or using drugs at work could get her fired immediately. I can assure you, sir, Giuseppe Jr. said, all of our employees are completely professional. Maya is one of our best servers. Well, she's having an off night then, Marcus said. Maybe she should go home and let someone competent take over our table. Giuseppe Jr. looked at Maya, then back at Marcus. He was in an impossible situation. He didn't want to reward Marcus's terrible behavior, but he also couldn't afford to lose a customer who was spending hundreds of dollars. Perhaps, Giuseppe Jr. said carefully, Maya could switch sections with another server, and someone else could finish taking care of your table. Maya felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Being moved away from a table was like admitting she had done something wrong. But she also knew that Giuseppe Jr. was trying to. Maya was gathering her notepad and pen, preparing to leave Marcus's table forever, when he made his cruelest comment yet. He had been drinking steadily all evening, and the alcohol had made him even more vicious than usual. Wait, Marcus called out, stopping Maya in her tracks. Before you go, I have one more question for you. Maya turned back reluctantly, knowing that whatever Marcus was about to say would hurt her deeply. Marcus looked at her with cold, calculating eyes. How many baby daddies do you have? 3, 4? I bet you don't even know who all the fathers are. That's typical for people like you. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She had never been pregnant, never even had a serious boyfriend. She had been too focused on her studies and later on caring for her sick brother to have time for relationships. But Marcus's cruel words brought back every painful stereotype she had ever heard about black women. I don't have any children, sir, Maya said, her voice breaking slightly. Marcus laughed harshly. Sure you don't, that's what they all say. But give it time. You'll probably be pregnant within a year, collecting welfare and blaming everyone else for your problems. It's what your kind always does. Maya's eyes filled with tears that she could no longer hold back. For the first time all evening, she couldn't maintain her professional composure. The combination of hours of abuse and this final, deeply personal attack had broken through her defenses. You don't know anything about me, Maya whispered, her voice shaking with emotion and anger. I know enough, Marcus replied smugly. I know you're uneducated, probably have a criminal record, and will never amount to anything more than what you are right now. And nobody serving her betters. The entire restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were staring in shock at Marcus's cruelty. Some people were recording with their phones. Others were whispering angrily to their companions. Even the kitchen staff had come out to see what was happening. Robert, James, and David sat in mortified silence. They were successful businessmen who prided themselves on being respectable, but they were allowing their colleague to destroy a young woman's dignity in public. Their silence made them complicit in Marcus's cruelty. Dr. William Hayes could not watch anymore. He stood up from his table with such force that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His wife Helen reached out to stop him, but he was already walking toward Marcus's table with determined steps. Dr. Hayes was 72 years old, but he carried himself with the dignity and strength of a man who had faced down racism his entire life and refused to be defeated by it. He had been a professor of music at the university for over 30 years, teaching students of all races and backgrounds. He had seen talent and brilliance in young people that others had overlooked or dismissed. Excuse me, Dr. Hayes said as he approached Marcus's table. His voice was calm but carried an authority that made everyone turn to look at him. Marcus looked up at the elderly black man with annoyance. What do you want, old man? This is a private conversation. No, it's not, Dr. Hayes replied firmly. You've been conducting this conversation loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear, and what I've heard is completely unacceptable. Marcus's face turned red with anger. He was not used to being challenged by anyone, especially not by another black person. In his twisted worldview, Dr. Hayes should have been deferential to him because of his wealth and status. Mind your own business, Marcus snapped. This has nothing to do with you. When I see a young woman being verbally abused in public, it becomes my business, Dr. Hayes said calmly. Your behavior tonight has been disgraceful. Marcus stood up from his chair, trying to use his height to intimidate the older man. Listen, Grandpa. I don't know what nursing home you escaped from, but you need to shuffle back to your table before I call security. Dr. Hayes didn't back down. He had faced much worse intimidation than this in his lifetime. I'm not going anywhere until you apologize to this young lady for the way you've treated her. Marcus laughed loudly. Apologize for what? For telling the truth? Look at her. He pointed at Maya, who was still standing nearby with tears in her eyes. She's exactly what I said she is. A nobody with no education, no skills, and no future. You don't know anything about her, Dr. Hayes said, his voice rising slightly. You've spent this entire evening making assumptions based on her race and her job. That says everything about your character and nothing about hers. Character, Marcus repeated mockingly. Let me tell you about character, old man. Character is building successful businesses from nothing. Character is creating jobs and contributing to society. Character is not serving other people's food and complaining about inequality. Dr. Hayes looked around the restaurant, noting how many people were watching and recording the confrontation. And you think your wealth gives you the right to treat other human beings like they're beneath you? It gives me the right to speak the truth, Marcus replied. Some people are winners and some people are losers. I'm a winner because I'm smart, I work hard, and I make good decisions. She's a loser because she doesn't. Maya listened to this exchange with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. She was grateful that someone was finally standing up for her, but she was also embarrassed that her humiliation had become such a public spectacle. Dr. Hayes turned to look at Maya with kind eyes. Young lady, would you mind telling this gentleman your name? Maya wiped the tears from her eyes and said softly, Maya Johnson. Miss Johnson, Dr. Hayes said formally, I apologize on behalf of decent people everywhere for the way you've been treated tonight. You deserve better than this. Marcus made a disgusted sound. Oh, this is rich. Two of them ganging up on me now. What's next? Are you going to tell me she's actually a secret genius? Dr. Hayes smiled slightly. I don't know about genius, but I suspect there's more to Miss Johnson than you've bothered to discover. Like what? Marcus challenged. What could someone like her possibly have that would impress someone like me? Dr. Hayes looked at Maya thoughtfully. Miss Johnson, do you have any special talents or interests? Any hobbies or skills that might surprise our friend here? Maya hesitated. She was afraid that if she mentioned her musical background, Marcus would find new ways to mock her. But Dr. Hayes's kind expression encouraged her to be honest. I used to study music, Maya said quietly. Marcus burst into laughter. Music? What kind of music? Rap? Gospel? Let me guess, you sing in some church choir and think that makes you talented. Maya's face burned with shame. She had actually studied classical piano at a prestigious music conservatory before family circumstances forced her to leave. But she knew that telling Marcus this would only give him more ammunition to hurt her with. Dr. Hayes, however, was intrigued. What kind of music did you study, Miss Johnson? Classical piano, Maya answered so quietly that people had to strain to hear her. Marcus nearly choked on his drink. Piano? Classical piano? Oh, this keeps getting better. You're telling me that our little waitress here thinks she's some kind of concert pianist? I never said that, Maya protested. I just studied music for a while. Where did you study? Dr. Hayes asked gently. Maya hesitated again, knowing that Marcus would use this information against her. The Conservatory of Music at the university, but I had to leave to help my family. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even Marcus's business partners were leaning forward to hear the conversation. Giuseppe Jr. stood nearby, realizing that his waitress might be much more than she appeared. Marcus was delighted by this revelation. The conservatory? You mean you actually convinced some school to let you in? What did you do, lie on your application? Or maybe they needed to fill some diversity quota. Dr. Hayes's eyes lit up with interest. The conservatory has very high standards. They only accept the most talented students. Miss Johnson, how long did you study there? 3 years, Maya answered. I was working toward my bachelor's degree in piano performance. Marcus slapped the table in amusement. Piano performance. Did you hear that, guys? Our waitress thinks she's a performer. What happened, sweetheart? Did they kick you out when they realized you weren't actually talented? Maya's composure finally cracked completely. The combination of Marcus's relentless cruelty and having to discuss her abandoned dreams in front of a room full of strangers was too much to bear. I left because my little brother got sick, Maya said, tears streaming down her face. He needed expensive treatments and my family couldn't afford them. Someone had to work to pay the medical bills. The restaurant was so quiet that people could hear Maya's quiet sobs. Even Marcus's business partners looked ashamed of their association with him. But Marcus showed no mercy. "Oh, boo-hoo," Marcus said mockingly. "Another sob story. I bet if I gave you 5 minutes, you could come up with 10 more excuses for why your life didn't turn out the way you wanted. That's what losers do. They make excuses instead of taking responsibility." Dr. Hayes had heard enough. His face was set with determination, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding respect in lecture halls and concert venues. "Mr. Wellington," Dr. Hayes said, having overheard Marcus's name during the evening, "you seem very confident about your assumptions regarding talent and ability. Perhaps you'd be willing to demonstrate your own cultural sophistication." Marcus walked toward the grand piano with false confidence, trying to maintain his arrogant demeanor even though his heart was racing. He had never played piano in front of an audience before, and his musical skills were extremely limited. But his pride would not let him back down from Dr. Hayes's challenge. The entire restaurant watched as Marcus approached the beautiful black piano. Giuseppe Jr. quickly moved some chairs out of the way to give Marcus space. The piano bench was adjusted to the right height and the lid was already open, revealing the pristine white and black keys. Dr. Hayes followed Marcus to the piano area, his wife Helen close behind. She was worried about what her husband was planning, but she trusted his judgment. In their 50 years of marriage, William had always stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. "William," Helen whispered to her husband, "what are you doing?" "Something that should have been done hours ago," Dr. Hayes replied quietly. "That young woman deserves better than this." Maya remained near Marcus's table, still wiping tears from her eyes. She couldn't believe that her private pain had become such a public spectacle. Part of her wanted to run away and never come back. But she needed this job too desperately to leave. Marcus sat down at the piano bench and cracked his knuckles dramatically, like he was preparing for a great performance. He looked around the restaurant with a smug expression, still believing that his wealth and status made him superior to everyone else present. "I want everyone to pay attention," Marcus announced loudly. "This is what real musical education sounds like. Not some community college nonsense, but the kind of training that only comes from proper breeding and expensive lessons." Dr. Hayes raised his eyebrows at this statement. "Expensive lessons, you say? Where did you study music, Mr. Wellington?" Marcus realized he had made a mistake by implying formal training. "I had private tutors," he said quickly. "The best money could buy. When you have my kind of resources, you get the finest education available." "Of course," Dr. Hayes said diplomatically. "I'm sure we're all eager to hear the results of such exclusive instruction." Marcus placed his hands on the piano keys and began to play. The piece he chose was Chopsticks, the simple children's tune that almost everyone learns when they first sit at a piano. But even this elementary piece gave Marcus trouble. His timing was off, he hit several wrong notes, and his technique was clumsy and awkward. The restaurant listened in stunned silence as Marcus struggled through the basic melody. It was clear to everyone present that he had very little musical training or natural ability. His performance was exactly what you would expect from someone who had taken a few casual piano lessons as a child and never practiced seriously. When Marcus finished, he stood up and took a theatrical bow, as if he had just performed a masterpiece. Thank you," he said to the silent audience. That was Chopin's Minute Waltz, a piece that requires years of study to master properly. Dr. Hayes had to bite his tongue to keep from correcting Marcus's obvious lie. Chopsticks was about as far from Chopin as a piece could be, and the Minute Waltz was one of the most challenging pieces in the classical piano repertoire. A few people in the restaurant gave polite, uncomfortable applause. They could tell that Marcus's performance had been amateur at best, but they weren't sure how to respond to his obvious delusion about his own abilities. Marcus walked back toward his table with a satisfied smile. "That's what real musical education sounds like," he announced. "Years of proper training and natural talent working together." Dr. Hayes followed Marcus back to the table area, his expression thoughtful. "That was interesting, Mr. Wellington. Very unique interpretation." Marcus beamed at what he thought was a compliment. "Thank you. Not everyone can appreciate classical music performed at that level." Dr. Hayes turned to Maya, who was still standing nearby. His expression was kind and encouraging. "Miss Johnson, you mentioned that you studied piano at the conservatory. Would you be willing to honor us with a performance?" Maya's eyes went wide with panic. Oh no, I couldn't. I'm working and I'm not dressed appropriately and I haven't played in months and… Nonsense, Marcus interrupted rudely. Let her play. I want to hear what passes for musical education at some state school. It'll be amusing to compare real talent with whatever she learned. Giuseppe Jr. stepped forward. Maya, if you'd like to play, you have my permission. Your shift is almost over anyway. Maya looked around the restaurant at all the faces watching her. She felt terrified and exposed, but something in Dr. Hayes' kind expression gave her courage. I don't know if I remember how to play anymore. Music is like riding a bicycle, Dr. Hayes said gently. Once you truly learn it, you never completely forget. Marcus was enjoying Maya's obvious nervousness. Come on, sweetheart. Don't be shy. Show us what you've got. I promise we won't laugh too hard. Maya's hands were shaking as she slowly walked toward the piano. She had dreamed of performing on a stage like this for most of her life, but not under these circumstances, not as a spectacle for a cruel man's entertainment. Dr. Hayes walked beside Maya as she approached the piano. What pieces did you study at the conservatory? He asked quietly. Chopin mostly, Maya answered softly. Some Beethoven, Bach, Rachmaninoff. My teacher said I had a natural feel for the romantic composers. Dr. Hayes nodded approvingly. Excellent choices. Very challenging composers. What was your favorite piece to perform? Maya thought for a moment. Chopin's Ballad No. 1 in G minor. It was the last piece I learned before I had to leave school. Dr. Hayes' eyes lit up with surprise and respect. The Chopin Ballade No. 1 was one of the most technically and emotionally demanding pieces in the piano repertoire. It required not just technical skill, but deep musical understanding and years of serious study. That's a beautiful and very difficult piece, Dr. Hayes said. Are you sure you feel comfortable performing it? Maya hesitated. She hadn't played the piece in over 2 years. Not since she left the conservatory. She wasn't sure if her fingers would remember the complex passages or if her technique was still sharp enough to handle the demanding sections Aunt Marcus had overheard their conversation and was delighted by the opportunity to humiliate Maya further. Chopin, really? You're going to try to play actual classical music? This should be hilarious. Maya felt a flash of anger at Marcus's continued mockery. She had spent years studying that piece, working with her professor to understand every nuance and technical challenge. She had been good at it once. Maybe she still was. I'll try, Maya said, sitting down at the piano bench. She adjusted the bench height and placed her hands on the keys. The piano was perfectly tuned and maintained, much better than the old upright piano she had practiced on at home before her brother got sick. Maya closed her eyes and tried to remember her professor's instructions. Feel the music first, he used to say. Let the emotion guide your technique, not the other way around. The restaurant fell completely silent as Maya prepared to play. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen. Giuseppe Jr. stood near the back, suddenly realizing that he might have a very special employee working for him. Dr. Hayes watched Maya with professional interest. He could tell from her posture and hand position that she had received serious classical training. Her technique looked proper even before she played a single note. Marcus stood near his table with his arms crossed, a cruel smile on his face. He was expecting Maya to embarrass herself, giving him even more ammunition for his attacks on her character and abilities. Maya took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 filled the restaurant like liquid gold. Maya's touch was gentle but sure, and the melody flowed from her fingers with natural grace. This was not the hesitant playing of an amateur, but the confident performance of someone who truly understood the music. As Maya continued playing, it became clear that her abilities were far beyond what anyone in the restaurant had expected. The piece was technically challenging, with rapid scales, complex harmonies, and demanding passages that required years of study to master. But Maya played it with apparent ease, her fingers dancing across the keys with fluid precision. Marcus's smile faded as he realized that Maya was not just competent, but actually talented. Very talented. More talented than he could ever hope to be, despite all his money and supposed advantages. Dr. Hayes listened with growing amazement. He had taught piano for over 30 years and had heard thousands of students perform. Maya's playing was not just technically excellent, but emotionally mature and musically sophisticated. She understood the piece deeply and was communicating that understanding through her performance. The restaurant was completely captivated. Diners stopped eating and talking to listen to the beautiful music. Several people were recording Maya's performance with their phones, but this time it was out of admiration rather than the desire to capture cruelty. As Maya played, she seemed to forget about Marcus, about her humiliation, about everything except the music. This was who she really was. Not a waitress or a cleaning lady, but a musician with real talent and training. For these few minutes, she was able to be herself again. The piece built to its dramatic climax, and Maya's playing became more passionate and powerful. Maya finished the final delicate notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1, her hands lifting gracefully from the keys as the last beautiful sounds faded into silence. For a moment, the entire restaurant remained completely quiet, as if everyone was afraid to break the spell that her music had created. Then the applause began. It started with Dr. Hayes, who began clapping slowly and deliberately. Giuseppe Jr. joined in, then his kitchen staff, then every single person in the restaurant. The applause grew louder and more enthusiastic until it became a thunderous ovation. People stood up from their tables, clapping and calling out words of appreciation. "Bravo," someone shouted from the back of the restaurant. "Beautiful," called out another voice. "Incredible," said a woman near the front. Maya sat at the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy and relief rather than pain and humiliation. For the first time in over 2 years, she had been able to perform music again. She had been able to be herself. Marcus stood frozen near his table, his face pale with shock. His mouth hung open as he stared at Maya, trying to process what had just happened. The woman he had spent the entire evening mocking and degrading had just delivered a performance that was more sophisticated and beautiful than anything he could ever hope to achieve. The applause continued for nearly 2 minutes, with people calling out compliments and encouragement to Maya. She finally stood up from the piano bench and gave a small, modest bow, which only made the crowd cheer louder. Dr. Hayes approached Maya with a huge smile on his face. "Miss Johnson, that was absolutely magnificent. Your technique is flawless and your musical interpretation is very mature. You have genuine talent." Maya wiped the tears from her eyes. "Thank you so much. I haven't played that piece in over 2 years. I was so nervous I might mess it up." "You didn't miss a single note," Dr. Hayes assured her. "And more importantly, you played with real emotion and understanding. That's not something you can teach. That's a gift." Giuseppe Jr. hurried over to join the conversation. "Maya, I had no idea you were so talented. How long have you been able to play like that?" "I studied at the conservatory for 3 years, Maya explained. "I was working toward my bachelor's degree in piano performance when my family situation changed." Dr. Hayes nodded with understanding. "Life sometimes forces us to make difficult choices. But talent like yours doesn't disappear. It just waits for the right opportunity to shine again." Meanwhile, Marcus was still standing in shock, watching the celebration happening around Maya. His business partners, Robert, James, and David, were looking at him with expressions of disgust and embarrassment. "Marcus," Robert said quietly, "I think we need to leave now." "Did you hear that performance?" James asked, his voice filled with amazement. "She's incredibly talented. You spent the whole evening insulting someone who's more gifted than any of us." David was the most upset of the three. "Marcus, what you did tonight was disgusting. I don't want to be associated with this kind of behavior." But Marcus was not ready to admit he had been wrong. His ego was too large and his prejudices were too deep. Instead of feeling ashamed, he felt angry and humiliated. He had been made to look foolish in front of a room full of people, and his pride could not handle it. "So what?" Marcus said loudly, trying to regain control of the situation. "So she can play piano, big deal. That doesn't change anything about what she is or where she comes from." The restaurant, which had been buzzing with excitement about Maya's performance, suddenly went quiet again. People turned to stare at Marcus with disbelief. Even after witnessing Maya's incredible talent, he was still trying to diminish her accomplishments. Dr. Hayes turned away from Maya to face Marcus directly. "Mr. Wellington, what exactly do you think Miss Johnson is?" Marcus felt all eyes on him, and his anger made him say things that were even more cruel than before. "She's still just a waitress who cleans toilets during the day. Playing piano doesn't change her social class or her background. She's still beneath people like us." A collective gasp went up from the crowd. People could not believe that Marcus was continuing his attack even after Maya had proven him so completely wrong. Maya felt the joy from her performance drain away, replaced by the familiar pain of Marcus's cruelty. Even her moment of triumph was being tainted by his refusal to see her as a human being worthy of respect. Dr. Hayes's expression became stern and authoritative. "Mr. Wellington, I think it's time you learned exactly who you've been insulting all evening." Marcus looked confused. "What are you talking about, old man?" Dr. Hayes straightened his shoulders and spoke in a clear, strong voice that carried throughout the restaurant. "My name is Dr. William Hayes. I am a professor emeritus of music at the university where I taught for 32 years. I have served on the admissions committee for the Conservatory of Music. For the past 15 years, Marcus's face began to turn pale as he realized that the old man he had been dismissing was actually someone with significant authority and reputation. Dr. Hayes continued, "I personally review every application to our piano performance program. We receive over 500 applications each year and accept only 20 students. The standards are extremely high, and only the most talented and dedicated young musicians are admitted." Maya looked at Dr. Hayes with surprise. She had not known who he was, but she was beginning to understand why he had been so encouraging and knowledgeable about her musical background. "Miss Johnson," Dr. Hayes continued, addressing Maya directly, "you mentioned that you studied at the conservatory for 3 years. What was your class rank?" Maya hesitated, not wanting to seem like she was bragging. I was ranked 3rd in my class," Dr. Hayes smiled proudly. "3rd out of 20 in one of the most competitive music programs in the country. That places Miss Johnson among the top young pianists of her generation." The restaurant erupted in murmurs of amazement and respect. People were looking at Maya with new eyes, realizing that they had just witnessed a performance by someone with truly exceptional talent and training. Marcus felt his world turning upside down. Everything he had assumed about Maya was not only wrong, but spectacularly wrong. She was not uneducated or untalented. She was, in fact, more educated and talented than he was. Dr. Hayes was not finished. "Furthermore, Miss Johnson, I believe I remember your application to our program. Your audition was one of the most impressive we heard that year. Your professor spoke very highly of your potential." Maya's eyes widened. "You remember my audition?" "Indeed I do," Dr. Hayes confirmed. "You played this same Chopin ballad, and it was beautiful then, too. I was disappointed when you didn't return for your senior year. We wondered what had happened to you." Maya's voice was soft with emotion. "My younger brother was diagnosed with kidney disease. My family needed me to work to help pay for his treatments." Dr. Hayes nodded with understanding and compassion. "You sacrificed your own dreams to help your family. That shows character that Mr. Wellington clearly cannot recognize or appreciate." Marcus was becoming increasingly desperate as he realized how badly he had misjudged the situation. But instead of apologizing or admitting his mistakes, he doubled down on his cruelty. "I don't care what school she went to or what some old professor thinks about her playing," Marcus said angrily. "She's still working as a waitress and a cleaning lady. That tells you everything you need to know about her real value in the world." The crowd's reaction to this statement was immediate and negative. People began booing Marcus and calling out angry comments. Someone shouted, "You're a disgrace." Another person yelled, "Leave her alone." Giuseppe Jr. stepped forward, his face red with anger. "Mr. Wellington, I think you should leave my restaurant immediately. Your behavior tonight has been completely unacceptable." Marcus looked around the restaurant and saw dozens of hostile faces staring back at him. Many people were still recording with their phones, and he was beginning to realize that his behavior might have consequences beyond this evening. "Fine," Marcus said angrily. "I don't want to eat in a place that hires people like her anyway. Come on, guys, we're leaving." But when Marcus turned to his business partners, he discovered that Robert, James, and David were no longer standing with him. They had moved away and were looking at him with expressions of disgust and disappointment. "Actually, Marcus," Robert said firmly, "I think we'll stay and finish our meal. Without you." James nodded in agreement. "We'll find another way home. I don't want to be seen leaving with you after the way you've behaved tonight." David was the most direct. "Marcus, consider our business partnership ended. I won't work with someone who treats other people the way you've treated Miss Johnson tonight." Marcus looked around the restaurant in growing panic. His business partners were abandoning him. The crowd was hostile, and his cruelty had been recorded for the world to see. For the first time in his life, his money and status were not protecting him from the consequences of his actions. "You people don't understand," Marcus said desperately. "I'm successful. I'm important. I employ hundreds of people. You can't treat me like this." Dr. Hayes looked at Marcus with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Mr. Wellington's success is not measured only by money. Character, kindness, and talent are also important. Tonight, Miss—" As Marcus stood alone in the center of the restaurant, abandoned by his business partners and facing the hostile stares of the other diners, Dr. Hayes turned his attention back to Maya. The elderly professor's kind eyes were filled with admiration, and something else that Maya couldn't quite identify. "Miss Johnson," Dr. Hayes said gently, "would you mind if I asked you a few more questions about your musical background?" Maya nodded, still overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "Of course, Dr. Hayes. You mentioned that you left the conservatory to help your family. Are you still interested in pursuing music professionally?" Maya's heart ached at the question. "More than anything," she said softly. "But my brother's medical treatments are expensive, and I need to work to help my family pay the bills." Dr. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "What is your brother's condition, if you don't mind me asking?" "He has chronic kidney disease," Maya explained. "He's only 16, and he needs dialysis 3 times a week. The treatments cost thousands of dollars every month, even with insurance." Several people in the restaurant were listening to this conversation, and Maya could see the sympathy in their faces. Giuseppe Jr. was particularly moved, realizing that his talented employee had been carrying this heavy burden while maintaining her professional composure every night at work. "I had no idea," Giuseppe Jr. said quietly. "Maya, why didn't you tell me about your situation? Maybe I could have helped somehow." Maya smiled sadly. "I didn't want special treatment. I just wanted to do my job well and earn honest money to help my family." Dr. Hayes was quiet for a moment, thinking deeply about something. Then his face lit up with an idea that made him smile broadly. "Miss Johnson, what if I told you that there might be a way for you to help your family and pursue your musical dreams at the same time?" Maya looked at him with confusion and hope. "What do you mean?" Dr. Hayes turned to address the entire restaurant. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed an extraordinary performance by a truly gifted young musician. Miss Johnson's talent is rare and special, and her dedication to her family shows the kind of character that makes great artists." The crowd murmured in agreement, still moved by Maya's performance and her story. Dr. Hayes continued, "I happen to know that the City Symphony Orchestra is looking for a talented pianist to perform as a guest soloist in their upcoming season. The position pays very well, and it would be perfect for someone with Miss Johnson's abilities." Maya's eyes went wide with shock. "The City Symphony? But I'm not ready for something like that. I haven't performed professionally in years." "Nonsense, Doctor," Hayes said firmly. "Your performance tonight proved that your talent is still very much alive. With a few weeks of practice to prepare specific pieces, you would be more than ready." Giuseppe Jr. stepped forward excitedly. "Maya, this could be the opportunity you've been waiting for." Maya felt overwhelmed by the possibility. The City Symphony Orchestra was one of the most prestigious musical organizations in the state. To perform with them as a soloist would be a dream come true, but it seemed almost too good to be possible. "Dr. Hayes," Maya said hesitantly, "Are you serious about this? You really think I could audition for the symphony?" Dr. Hayes smiled warmly. "Miss Johnson, I don't just think you could audition. I am the chairman of the symphony's artistic committee. I have the authority to invite you to perform as our guest soloist, and after tonight's performance, that invitation is yours if you want it." The restaurant erupted in cheers and applause. People were clapping and calling out encouragement to Maya, who stood in stunned silence as she tried to process this incredible turn of events. Marcus, who was still standing nearby, watched this scene with growing horror. Not only had he been completely wrong about Maya's background and abilities, but now she was being offered the kind of opportunity that money couldn't buy. His attempts to humiliate her had backfired spectacularly. Furthermore, Dr. Hayes continued, "The symphony has a fund specifically designed to help talented musicians who are facing financial hardships. If you accept our invitation to perform, I believe we could arrange for a substantial payment that would help with your brother's medical expenses." Maya began to cry again, but these were tears of joy and disbelief. "I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever dreamed possible." Dr. Hayes patted her shoulder gently. "Say yes, my dear. The musical world needs talented young artists like you." "Yes," Maya said through her tears. "Yes, I would be honored to perform with the symphony." The restaurant exploded in celebration. People were standing and cheering, and several diners approached Maya to congratulate her personally. Giuseppe Jr. was beaming with pride, and even his kitchen staff had come out to join the celebration. An elderly woman from a nearby table approached Maya with tears in her eyes. "My dear, your performance was absolutely beautiful. My late husband was a music teacher, and he always said that true talent shines through no matter what the circumstances." A young couple with their teenage daughter also came over. "We brought our daughter here tonight to celebrate her acceptance to music school," the father said. "Your performance was inspiring. It reminded us all why we love music." Their daughter, who looked to be about 17, was starstruck. "Miss Johnson, I study piano too. Could I ask you for some advice sometime?" Maya was overwhelmed by the kindness and support from these strangers. "Of course," she said warmly. "Music is meant to be shared." Dr. Hayes watched these interactions with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of response that Maya deserved, and it was a stark contrast to the cruelty she had endured from Marcus earlier in the evening. Meanwhile, Marcus was realizing that his situation was getting worse by the minute. Not only had he been exposed as ignorant and cruel, but now Maya was being celebrated and offered opportunities that highlighted just how wrong he had been about her. A middle-aged man approached Dr. Hayes and Maya. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I'm James Richardson from the Arts Foundation. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. Miss Johnson, if you're interested, our foundation provides scholarships for talented musicians to complete their education. We would be very interested in discussing your situation." Maya looked at Dr. Hayes in amazement. "Is this really happening?" Dr. Hayes chuckled. "Word travels fast in the music community, my dear. When people hear exceptional talent, they want to help nurture it." Another woman joined the group. "I'm Sarah Chen, and I write for the arts section of the newspaper. Miss Johnson, would you be willing to let me write a story about your performance tonight and your upcoming opportunity with the symphony? I think our readers would be very inspired by your story." Maya felt like she was dreaming. A few hours ago, she had been a waitress being humiliated by a cruel customer. Now she was being offered performance opportunities, scholarships, and media attention that could change her entire life. Giuseppe Jr. approached Maya with a huge smile. "Maya, I want you to know that you'll always have a job here at Harmonies if you need it. But more importantly, I want to offer you something else. Would you be interested in performing here regularly? We could start a weekly concert series, and you could be our featured artist." "That's a wonderful idea," Dr. Hayes said approvingly. "Regular performance experience would be excellent preparation for your symphony debut." Maya was laughing and crying at the same time. "I can't believe all of this is happening. This morning, I woke up worried about paying my brother's medical bills, and now you have options," Dr. Hayes finished gently. "You have opportunities to use your talent in ways that can help your family and fulfill your own dreams." Marcus, who had been listening to this entire conversation, finally could not contain his anger any longer. He had been publicly humiliated, abandoned by his business partners, and forced to watch as the woman he had tried to destroy was being celebrated and offered incredible opportunities. "This is ridiculous," Marcus shouted, causing everyone to turn and look at him. "You people are acting like she's some kind of hero just because she can play piano. She's still nothing more than a waitress who got lucky tonight." The crowd's reaction was immediate and negative. People began booing Marcus again, and several men started moving toward him with threatening expressions. Dr. Hayes held up his hand to calm the crowd. "Mr. Wellington," he said with dignified authority, "I think you've said quite enough for one evening. Perhaps it's time for you to leave and reflect on the lessons you might learn from tonight's events." Marcus looked around the restaurant one more time and saw nothing but hostile faces. Even the staff were glaring at him with obvious disgust. He had burned every bridge and made himself completely unwelcome. "Fine," Marcus said bitterly. "But don't think this changes anything. One lucky night doesn't erase what she really is." As Marcus stormed toward the exit, Maya called out to him, "Mr. Wellington." Marcus stopped and turned back, perhaps hoping for some acknowledgement of his supposed superiority. Maya looked at him with dignity and compassion that he did not deserve. "I hope someday you learn to see people for who they really are, not what you assume about them based on their appearance or circumstances." Marcus stared at her for a moment, perhaps seeing her clearly for the first time all evening. But his pride was too strong, and his prejudices were too deep. Without saying another word, 3 months later, Maya Johnson stood backstage at the Grand Concert Hall, wearing an elegant black evening gown and feeling more nervous than she had ever felt in her life. Tonight was the night she would perform as guest soloist with the City Symphony Orchestra, playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 in front of an audience of nearly 2,000 people. Dr. Hayes appeared beside her, looking distinguished in his formal tuxedo. "How are you feeling, my dear?" Maya took a deep breath, terrified and excited at the same time. "I still can't believe this is really happening." "Believe it," Dr. Hayes said warmly. "You've earned this opportunity through your talent and hard work. The past 3 months of preparation have been remarkable to watch." It had indeed been 3 months of incredible change for Maya. True to his word, Dr. Hayes had arranged for her to receive a full scholarship to complete her final year at the conservatory. The Arts Foundation had provided additional financial support to help with her brother's medical expenses. Giuseppe Jr. had started a weekly concert series at Harmony's restaurant, with Maya as the featured performer, which had brought in additional income and valuable performance experience. Most importantly, Jerome's health had stabilized with consistent treatment, and the family's financial stress had been greatly reduced. Maya had been able to focus on her music again while still supporting her family. "Dr. Hayes," Maya said softly, "I still don't understand why you helped me that night. You didn't even know me." Dr. Hayes smiled thoughtfully. "Maya, I've spent my entire career in music education. I've seen too many talented young people give up their dreams because of circumstances beyond their control. When I heard you play that night, I knew I was listening to someone special. But more than that, when I saw how you maintained your dignity in the face of such cruelty, I knew you had the character to succeed." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. "I was so close to quitting music forever. If you hadn't been there that night—" "But I was there," Dr. Hayes interrupted gently, "and you were there with your talent and your courage. Sometimes life puts the right people in the right place at the right time." A stage manager approached them. "Miss Johnson will be ready for you in 5 minutes." Maya nodded, then turned back to Dr. Hayes. "What happened to Mr. Wellington?" "I've always wondered." Dr. Hayes's expression became more serious. "I'm afraid Mr. Wellington's evening at Harmony's had significant consequences for him. Several people recorded his behavior that night, and the videos went viral on social media. The story was picked up by news outlets, and his reputation was severely damaged." Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. She didn't want to feel happy about someone else's misfortune, but she also couldn't deny a sense of justice. Dr. Hayes continued, "His business partners ended their relationships with him as they said they would. His companies lost several major contracts when clients saw the videos and decided they didn't want to be associated with his behavior. He faced significant financial losses. Does he still live in the city?" Maya asked. "He moved away about 6 weeks after that night," Dr. Hayes replied. "I heard that he's trying to rebuild his business in another state, but his reputation follows him. In today's world, behavior like his doesn't stay hidden for long." Maya was quiet for a moment, thinking about the man who had caused her so much pain that night. "I hope he learned something from what happened. I hope he becomes a better person." Dr. Hayes looked at Maya with admiration. "Your ability to show compassion towards someone who treated you so cruelly is remarkable, Maya. That's the mark of true character." The stage manager returned. "Miss Johnson, it's time." Maya took one final deep breath and walked toward the stage. As she emerged from behind the curtain, she was greeted by thunderous applause from the packed concert hall. The audience had read about her story in the newspaper, and many had come specifically to hear the talented young woman who had overcome adversity to pursue her dreams. Maya sat down at the beautiful concert grand piano and adjusted the bench. The orchestra, conducted by Maestro Giovanni Rossi, was waiting for her signal. In the audience, she could see Giuseppe Jr. and several staff members from Harmony's restaurant, all beaming with pride. Her mother and Jerome were in the front row, both of them crying with joy. As Maya placed her hands on the keys and nodded to Maestro Rossi, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain and humiliation of that night 3 months ago seemed like it had happened to a different person. She had discovered that her talent was not only still alive, but stronger than ever. The opening orchestral introduction to Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the concert hall with its beautiful, romantic melody. When it was time for Maya to enter, she began playing with confidence and passion that surprised even herself. The months of intensive practice had not only restored her technical abilities, but had deepened her musical understanding. The audience was captivated from the first notes. Maya's performance was not just technically perfect, but emotionally powerful and musically mature. She played with the confidence of someone who had found her true calling and the wisdom of someone who had overcome real hardship. During the slow second movement, Maya thought about her brother Jerome, who was now healthy and back in school. She thought about her mother, who no longer had to work 3 jobs to pay medical bills. She thought about Dr. Hayes, whose kindness had changed her life. And yes, she even thought about Marcus Wellington, hoping that wherever he was, he had learned to see people as individuals rather than stereotypes. The final movement of the concerto was triumphant and joyful, and Maya played it with energy and brilliance that brought the audience to their feet. When the last notes faded away, the applause was deafening. People were standing and cheering, calling out "Bravo!" and "Encore." Maya stood up from the piano bench and took her bow, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude and joy. This was who she was meant to be. This was her true calling. Maestro Rossi approached her with a huge smile and embraced her warmly. "Miss Johnson, that was magnificent. The orchestra and I would be honored to have you return as our guest soloist again soon." As Maya walked off the stage to continued applause, she was greeted by Dr. Hayes, who was beaming with pride. "Maya, that was extraordinary. You have a brilliant future ahead of you." Maya hugged Dr. Hayes tightly. "Thank you for believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself." Giuseppe Jr. appeared with a bouquet of roses. "Maya, everyone at Harmony's is so proud of you. The restaurant has been packed every week for your concerts. You've brought so much joy to our customers." Maya's mother and Jerome made their way backstage, both of them crying tears of happiness. Jerome, who looked much healthier than he had 3 months ago, hugged his sister tightly. "Maya, you were amazing," Jerome said. "I'm so proud to be your brother." "Everything I did was for you," Maya said softly. "For our family." Her mother, Mrs. Johnson, could barely speak through her tears. "Baby, your father would have been so proud. He always said you had a gift that would change the world someday." As the celebration continued backstage, Maya received congratulations from orchestra members, music critics, and audience members who had been moved by her performance. Several people approached her with professional opportunities, recording contracts, performance invitations, and teaching positions. James Richardson from the Arts Foundation found Maya in the crowd. "Miss Johnson, after tonight's performance, our foundation would like to offer you a full graduate scholarship to any music school in the country. Your talent deserves the finest training available." Sarah Chen, the newspaper reporter who had written about Maya's story, was also there. "Maya, I've received dozens of letters from readers who were inspired by your story. Would you be interested in writing a book about your journey? I think it could help other young people who are facing similar challenges." Dr. Hayes watched all of this with deep satisfaction. "Maya, you've gone from being a hidden talent to becoming an inspiration for others. That's the true measure of success." As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Maya found herself alone with Dr. Hayes for a moment. "Dr. Hayes, I have something I want to tell you." "What's that, my dear?" "That night at Harmony's, when Mr. Wellington was being so cruel, I was ready to give up on everything. Not just music, but hope itself. I thought maybe he was right about me, that I really was just a waitress with impossible dreams." Dr. Hayes looked sad. "Maya, you must never let anyone else define your worth or your potential." "I know that now," Maya said. "But what I really want to say is that your kindness didn't just save my musical career. It saved me as a person. You reminded me that there are good people in the world who see the best in others. Dr. Hayes's eyes filled with tears. Maya, in my 40 years of teaching, I've never been prouder of a student than I am of you tonight. Not just because of your musical talent, but because of the person you've become. 6 months later, Maya was completing her final semester at the conservatory and preparing for graduate school. She had been accepted to the most prestigious music programs in the country and had her choice of full scholarships. Her weekly concerts at Harmonies had become so popular that Giuseppe Jr. had to take reservations weeks in advance.